and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 413, and today's date is July 11th, 2014, and the title of this episode is The Central Banker's U.S. Government Recovery Illusion is Now Falling Apart. We can see that there are many retailers reporting in saying, you know something, it isn't the weather. It looks like we have a major problems. We see bank failures. In the European Union, they are starting to completely collapse. We see the policies in Europe starting to completely fall apart. Debt is rising, unemployment is rising, austerity is being implemented on the people. All of this recovery that they've been talking about is non-existent. Greece, Cyprus, Portugal, France, Spain, Italy, all having major problems. Germany's now seeing it, UK is now seeing it, and it's continually spreading across all the private Western central bank countries. Here in the United States, of course, we have the illusion to make it look like everything is fine, but as we know, as we continually show, there are certain indicators here that are not keeping with the manipulated, illusionary numbers that the government and the Fed are continually pushing out, and they're getting very nervous about this, that as time goes on, they're continually separating, and they're looking at this situation and they're saying, you know what? It is time for the event. This is why the Fed was out there saying they're going to taper down until October and say they're out of the market because we have a strong economy. They're out there pushing the housing recovery. Retail is fine. Unemployment is going to continually come down to keep this illusion alive throughout the summer and into the early fall. And this is when things are going to start to really ramp up in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Central Africa, and in the Pacific, because these are all the flashpoints. And we will see an event here occur. You can see the government officials are completely setting this up, setting the stage for this main event to cover up the economic collapse. Now let's get into the economic collapse news, and we're going to head out to the UK, and what we're seeing out there is UK construction completely shrinks in May, and they're looking at the second quarter growth and they're scratching their heads going, it might not be as strong as we thought. Things might be starting to fall apart, and British construction output suffered a steep fall in May, raising the prospect that overall economic growth may fall short of expectations in the second quarter. Construction output dropped by 1.1% in May, and of course, you have to remember, going through these summer months, this is the hot season again for construction, for real estate sales. This should be booming like there's no tomorrow, but it isn't. Now, the news is out there saying that the Portuguese bank crisis, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just what we're seeing on the surface, and what's really coming is a complete disaster in the European banking system. The deeper issue is the European Central Bank papering over economic problems. The Portuguese crisis over Banco Espírito Santo should be a reality check for European markets. Espírito Santo is just the excuse. Real problems lie far deeper. The bank is a weak institution irrespective of its parent holding companies dabbling in risky assets in emerging markets that saner banks would not even touch. For instance, the bank has invested in Angola, setting up a subsidiary known as Banco Espírito Santo Angola, which is abbreviated as BESA, has relied on Banco Espírito Santo for its funding, with loans in Angola amounting to 220% of deposits. Bad loans have exploded in Angola in recent years, rising by 84% from 2010 to 2013. BESA's assets include 6 billion euros worth of loans payable, and Banco Espírito Santo has a 55% stake in the bank. You can see right now, this is a house of cards waiting to come tumbling down. It is going to hit hard because, of course, we have the European Union out there saying that, no, everything looks good, we're in a recovery. Forget about those negative interest rates. Forget about, all this debt and all this unemployment. That's meaningless. Everything is fine. We're going to give thumbs up to the banking system in Bulgaria, and all of a sudden the Bulgaria banks completely crash and come crumbling down. And right now Bulgaria is going to allow its fourth biggest lender to collapse and will hive off its healthy activities into separate banks as it moves to clear up the mess from the country's worst financial scandal. So we can see it is completely falling apart, and it's going to continue as we go down into this year. And of course, you have to remember these government officials, the central bankers, they were out there saying that, God, 2014 is going to be the year of growth. It's going to be incredible. We're seeing incredible GDP. We see less people being unemployed. We see countries cleaning up their debt problem, and we're seeing none of this whatsoever. We're seeing the absolute opposite. And this is what I always say. Every time a central bank, a government official comes out there and tells you something, it is always the opposite. And what we're seeing now is the CEO of Europe's largest insurer just made a statement saying that the fundamental problems are not solved, and everybody knows it. The euro crisis is not over. It is completely heading down into the abyss. It is going to crash hard. There is only one country where the debt level last year was lower than 2012, and this is a signal that debt crisis can't be over. Only a recognition of the debt crisis has changed. He said that if the debt levels are not going down in the end, we will have a problem. That is for sure. Everyone knows that Draghi, the unelected dictator of Europe, and all its bankers are lying when they say that day after day that things are getting better. And we realize this. They are not getting better. They are getting worse, much, much worse. Here in the United States, we understand that real estate is completely imploding on itself. I mean, I've said this many, many times. We are in the hot season for real estate, and we're seeing absolutely nothing. We're seeing prices start to come down. Houses on the market for much longer than they normally would be. We can see prices are starting to drop. The people are starting to drop their prices. Mortgage applications, refinancing in the toilet, mortgage companies laying off thousands upon thousands of people, retail not going anywhere except down, and more retail stores are out there letting everyone know, you know what, it isn't the weather. We're seeing that the economy is the problem. We have Walmart, the Container Store, lumber liquidators, and we're seeing now that Gap announced that its comparable store sales, which includes online sales, are down 2%. So online and store sales both are down. Gap stores and Banana Republic stores each saw sales tumble by 7%. And guess what? They're acknowledging it is the economy. It has nothing to do with the weather whatsoever. Bob Evans reported earnings that were disappointing. They're saying, and this is coming from the company CFO, Mark Hood, consumer confidence continues to be adversely impacted by ongoing macroeconomic headwinds, including healthcare costs and unemployment, which disproportionately affects lower and middle income consumers. Basically what he's saying is the economy is falling apart. People don't have jobs. Obamacare is hurting the whole entire situation, and their sales are continually declining. Aluminum giant Alcoa unofficially kicked off earnings season with its report Tuesday afternoon that there is still a long way to go to get full picture of just what's going on out there. But the first week of earnings has certainly given us some mixed, if not downright disappointing signals about the U.S. consumer. We can see right now that the entire situation is not getting better. We see pretty much nothing going forward, and you can tell right now that this economy is not going to improve. Economists now are looking at the situation, and of course they're saying, well, we still see a little bit of growth, but we're going to downgrade our predictions right now, forecasts right now, and we're looking that this second quarter, instead of 3.5%, the GDP might be around 3%, And you can tell right now that this is going to be a lot worse than that. They're trying to keep the view that everything is fine, and when the second quarter hits, it's not going to be 3.5%, 3%. It's going to be much, much lower. And they're just trying to make everyone believe that yes, the economy is slowing a little bit, but everything's okay. So don't panic, everyone. And this is the time where you need to start ramping up on your supplies, buying gold, buying silver, having a weapon in your home. Make sure you have batteries. Make sure you have toiletries. Make sure you have food and other supplies for when this system does come down. Now, the Federal Reserve new number 2 official says regulators must continue to work to end the need for the government to bail out big banks in a crisis. Now, he's saying we shouldn't break up the big banks. We just need stricter capital requirements. That's all we need. And we have to make sure that these bail-in documents are ready to go when we need them. So, we're not putting this on the taxpayers. Well, they are putting it on the taxpayers because it's the taxpayers' money inside the bank. And you have to remember, these bail-in documents say that they can go after creditors and depositors and take their money just like they did in Cyprus. And you have to remember, Germany gave their blessing right now on bail-ins. So you can see Europe, the United States, UK, Canada, Australia, Switzerland, they are preparing and getting ready to take everyone's money. Now, it's going to be, of course, this is in the best interest of the people. We need to do this. We need to take some of your money. And don't worry, we're going to give you worthless bank stock. Because the banks are insolvent, and that's the one thing that you want. You want a worthless bank stock. Now, Iceland, they pretty much got rid of their bankers, and they completely went off the grid for a while, and their economy has improved. And we see Iceland is planning to sell its first Eurobond since 2006, moving away from the U.S. dollar funding it has been dependent on since the economy crash in 2008. A syndicate official working on the latest deal said that it will allow the country to move away from its usual U.S. dollar investor base, as the trade is likely to appeal to British-based asset managers as well as investors that are currently short of euro supply. So they're moving away from the dollar, moving towards the euro, and we can see many, many countries starting to do this because they're looking at the situation and they're saying, you know what, let's go with a different currency. Let's start that bilateral trade. Let's just protect ourselves because the dollar is backed by nothing. It's actually backed by war. Because we see the U.S. government in all these areas trying to maintain the status quo of the dollar. So really, if you really want to say it, the dollar is backed by war, and nobody wants to be involved with a currency where it's backed by war and force. And we can see many countries starting to make bilateral trade deals with China, with Russia, and they're starting to look at the situation, and you can see right now the faith of the dollar, the faith in the dollar is starting to deteriorate among the countries, and they're looking in all different areas. Now, there's a report out of Breitbart right now saying that TSA is allowing illegals to fly without verifiable ID. Illegal aliens are being allowed to fly in commercial airliners without valid identification, according to the National Border Patrol Council. The aliens who are getting released on their own reconnaissance are being allowed to board and travel commercial airlines by simply showing their notice to appear forms. So they are allowed to travel with no identification, but every single legal American going to fly needs to be scrutinized with their ID or their passport, pat down, searched, and checked to see if they're on a terrorist list. These illegals that are coming to the country are allowed to fly anywhere with this piece of paper that says they have to appear in court. Does this make sense to anyone? It makes no sense to me whatsoever. And we can see right now that the illegals are still coming over. But what is amazing, though, is the amount of guards that they're using to keep the people out from seeing the illegals. They have many, many guards. Now, if they just took these guards and they put them at the borders, they wouldn't even come across the border. But they have so many guards now, and so many fences, and so many everything else guarding these illegals, where the congressman can't get in there, news reporters can't get in there. If they just took that energy and used it on the borders, these children wouldn't be coming over the border right now. Now, there is a listener who, and he goes by the name of Old Timer, don't know his name, but he mentioned something about a deal with El Salvador and a lot of the Central American countries with the United States and accepting GMO seeds. And this is very interesting. And this could be another reason why these children are coming up here. The United States will withhold the Millennium Challenge Compact aid deal. This is about $277 million in aid to El Salvador. But to receive this aid, El Salvador must purchase the genetically modified seeds from Monsanto. And right now, El Salvador does not want these seeds, because what they're saying is that these seeds will disrupt the country's local farmers, an action that would have negative effects on El Salvador's agricultural industry, in addition to presenting serious health and environmental risks. So I'm wondering if Obama made some type of deal saying, listen, send your children up here, we'll give them a better life. Now can you accept the Monsanto seeds? Because you have to remember, Monsanto has a huge government base where they fund and pay out a lot to the government. And you have to remember, China, Russia, Europe, they're all rejecting the GMO seeds, and they need to get these someplace else. Of course, here in the United States, we allow the GMO seeds. And these are pretty much altered genetically modified seeds. And we can see right now that this could be another reason why these children are coming over the border, for the immigration bill to pass, to get work permits for them, to put them on Obamacare, and to get this aid package down to El Salvador with the Monsanto seeds, to prop Monsanto up. And of course, as we know, the central bankers, their whole business is debt, to bring more debt down to El Salvador. And you can see that this could be a complete another reason why this is happening. Now, we understand that there was another spy in Germany. They found him out, and the State Department spokesman pretty much didn't want to handle any type of questions. They're staying very, very quiet about this. And Germany right now, after all that has been done, is now saying that Germany will instruct its intelligence service to limit cooperation with the U.S. You know, after severing ties with Russia, crushing the cordial relations with China, alienating France, the Obama administration, following not one, not two, but 3 spying scandals in just the past year, has managed to sour relations with Germany now. German Chancellor's office has issued instructions to the National Intelligence Services to limit cooperation with the U.S. following alleged U.S. spying case. So we are not making friends anywhere. When I say we, it's the United States government, the central bankers. They really aren't. They're making so many enemies across the world. It's not even funny anymore, because they're imposing more and more laws. They're coming down on different countries. They're spying on everyone. It's coming out, and it really is starting to hurt the U.S. and the central bankers. And of course, the Department of Justice has officially ended its criminal probe concerning allegations of spying and document stealing involving the United States Senate and the Central Intelligence Agency. And of course, you know, Obama administration is refusing to pursue criminal investigations of CIA spying. I wonder what they have on the president, because you know that every single government official has been spied upon, just in case they are needed to blackmail them into doing something they don't want them to do. And we can see right now that, who knows, all of a sudden they're not going to go any further, Department of Justice. So they might have used some blackmail on these people to say, you know what, step off of this. This is not of interest anymore, and don't pursue this anymore. Okay, now the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan, he is out there, and if he's elected, he's going to change the constitution in Turkey. What will this do? This will allow him to have more power, to be much more of a dictator, to control the country in the way that he wants it to be controlled. You have to remember, he's the one who shut down Twitter, YouTube, because of that scandal of that false flag where he had the military personnel in Turkey sneak into Syria with missile launchers. He wanted them to fire the missiles back from Syria into Turkey, and he wanted everyone to believe that Syria was attacking Turkey, and this way they can get the NATO forces in there, the United States can get in there, and right now he wants to change the Constitution, which would give him more power. Now, looking at Hamas and Israel, it looks like right now the UN Human Rights Office has strongly censured the Tel Aviv regime for violating the laws of war by bombing Palestinian homes in the besieged Gaza Strip. And also in the Times of Israel, it seems like Hamas might not have done the kidnapping of these teens, because it looks like supporters of the Islamic State in Bayat al-Maqdis claims attacks in this area. And they're saying there's other jihadist groups that are saying that, no, we are the ones who kidnapped the teens. So it looks like this whole story is starting to break, and this whole entire pounding on the Palestinian trying to get to Hamas might not be true, because this is coming out of the Times of Israel, where they're questioning it and saying, this might not be correct. So before any government, and this is anywhere, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, China, before we start bombing people and killing people, because you cannot take that back. Once you kill a person, they're dead. Maybe we should have valid proof, make sure we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, instead of having these, other agendas that most of these countries are doing, most of these government officials are doing, because most governments, I would say almost all, don't really tell you the truth of why they're pushing a military agenda. Most of the time it's lies. And most of the time war gets started with lies. And we're seeing more and more of this as time goes on. Now, Russia is out there and they are blasting EU again, because they're getting ready to push forward new sanctions on about 11 new people right now. And the Russian Foreign Ministry has censured European Union's plan to extend the list of people slapped with sanctions over the ongoing Ukraine crisis. This is an unfriendly act which cannot but reflect on the overall state of our leadership with the EU. With the relationship with the EU. We are absolutely convinced that this is no method for cooperation between countries, between such major players as Russia and the European Union. And we can see they are still not putting the sanctions on the sectors of Russia or on Russia itself, because they realize if they do this, this would really, really harm the European Union and the United States. So they're continually putting it on government officials, and most of these officials have withdrawn all their money from the Western side, brought it into the Russian side. So is it really going to hurt them? No, and they know it's not going to hurt them, so they're just doing it to show everyone that, see, we can place sanctions on people. Now, Russia is going to close 3 border crossings with Ukraine. They're coming under fire. They're retreating and moving their personnel back because the fighting in Ukraine is getting worse. It is not getting better. And right now, Poroshenko threatens to track down and kill hundreds for each dead Ukrainian soldier. So he's looking to do a complete cleansing of the people in this southeast region. And he already has plans to arrest the leaders, to bring everyone into the fold of Ukraine, and put down any of those people that give him a problem. And you can see the war, the anti-terror forces are pushing really hard on these people. And you have to remember, the people in the southeast region, they had a referendum, they voted, they didn't want to be part of this puppet regime which is controlled by the United States government, the central bankers, and the bankers are pushing their orders on the puppet regime, telling them what to do, and they're going to go after the southeastern region, and then they're going to go into Crimea. And it looks like now in Iraq things are getting worse. The Islamic State is making their move into Baghdad. It looks like they're headed towards the airport in Baghdad, and we can see right now that the foreign minister of Iraq, Zabari, a Kurd by nationality, has confirmed that the Kurdish political bloc had ceased its activities in the government in response to accusations by Maliki. So right now the Kurds are leaving the Iraqi government, and we can see things starting to splinter off right now. And this is exactly what the United States central bankers, Israel, and the Arab nations want. They want this to be separated. They want a Sunni, Kurd, Shiite, separated type of nation, and they're trying to push this agenda very, very hard, and they're trying to get Iran and Syria eventually into this mix, but right now they're starting with Syria and Iraq. They are moving into Lebanon, and this is getting worse and worse. And now Libya, it's not really in the news that much, but things are really getting worse in Libya. The United Nations has evacuated dozens of foreign staff from its mission in Libya due to a deteriorating security situation in the country. And we can see things are really ramping up there. And it's happening in Libya now. We have problems in Yemen. The tribes are fighting back there. Of course, they're called Al-Qaeda, which is just the people of the country. Libya, we have the tribes in there fighting back. ISIS, or the Islamic State, is moving into Lebanon, trying to bring that into the fold. So this whole thing is turning into complete chaos right now. We have many different things happening. Even in Iraq, we have one thing with ISIS, with the Islamic State, and we have the other side, which is the Sunni rebellion with the Ba'ath Party, with the Saddam Hussein generals trying to maneuver and take over the country. So we have many, many things happening there, and they want this confusion at this point, because eventually what they're going to do is they're most likely going to use this to create some type of an event, because the government officials just won't let us forget that the Islamic State is very, very dangerous, and they're going to attack Europe and the United States. Now, we understand CISA, which is like CISPA, but it's pretty much the same thing. But Dianne Feinstein created it. And, it allows companies to share personal information voluntarily without being subject to any type of lawsuit or liability. But here are a couple things that CISA or CISPA does. What the U.S. government needs to see your data, what they need right now to see your data is this. They need to suspect you have a crime. They need to get a warrant. They need to request data from each company separately. Once CISA or CISPA passes, they need absolutely nothing. Nothing. U.S. government agencies can spy on you. Which ones? Well, NSA, but they do it illegally. If CISA or CISPA passes, IRS, FBI, FEMA, NSA, Interpol, U.S. Army, Veterans Affairs, Homeland Security, U.S. Postal Service, Immigration, pretty much everybody. What law enforcement needs to spy on you? Well, right now they need a warrant, they need a subpoena, they need a national security letter. If CISA or CISPA passes, nothing. They don't need anything. I mean, you could see how damaging this really is. It's pretty much removing everyone's rights. Places online where you can expect privacy. Currently, it's Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Amazon. Kind of private. NSA still has back doors into these companies, but in the most part, many of the other government agencies can't access it. If CISPA and CISPA passes, guess what? Your information is not private anymore because they can hand it over to the government. So there is no privacy whatsoever. And we can see why this is so dangerous. Okay, now we understand that Syria has pretty much gotten rid of all its chemical weapons. And it's being brought out into the ocean and destroyed, and some of these chemicals are coming back to the United States. And right now, a ship carrying the industrial chemicals used in the manufacture of chemical weapons has arrived from Syria in Port Arthur, Texas right now. So these chemicals now are in Texas. They're sitting there waiting to be destroyed, and who knows, we might see some type of incident where they say these terrorists attacked the area, stole the chemicals, and now are running around the country in lone wolf groups, and we don't know where they are. But it's very interesting that the chemicals are in Texas. We had the crisis actors being advertised for Texas, and pretty much everything's happening in Texas. Now, Europe is bracing for a potential threat of returned Syrian war veterans. European governments this week announced plans for sweeping travel bans and new measures to combat lone wolf terror suspects, as a quadrupling in the rate of radicalized Europeans entering the war in Syria has the West bracing itself for the potential security threat posed by returning fighters. Now, Eric Holder is out there, and he's the U.S. Attorney General, and he's saying that he's urging the European nations to be more preemptive in combating violent extremism, perhaps suggesting that Europe might need to straddle the line between defending against terror attacks and encroaching on civil liberties. Wow. So he's saying, who cares about the rights of the people? You go after those terrorists, whatever you have to do. That's pretty much what they do here now. So this is their train of thought, to go after terrorists and remove the rights of the people in the process. Their real goal is to remove the rights of the people. This is why they're saying it. French officials announced they would propose legislation to ban suspected proponents of terrorism from leaving the country and would expand censorship of extremist websites. So you see what they're using. They're using all this terrorism to remove rights, to remove certain websites, and they're going to continually do this over and over and over. And of course, our government officials are out there. Senator John Barrasso is saying that ISIS is a threat to the U.S. homeland. And it's very interesting how they continually use the word homeland. I mean, this sounds like Nazi Germany. This is our homeland. I mean, how about just the United States of America? Or America. But they decided to throw in homeland. ISIS, or the Islamic State, the Al-Qaeda splinter group that has captured city after city in Iraq, is proving itself to be a bold, in-your-face terrorist group that poses a major threat to the U.S. and all of Western civilization. And this is coming from Senator John Barrasso. Our homeland is in direct threat. We are the target, and my concern is the safety and security of the people of the United States. Here in the United States, there will be some type of terrorist attack. And they are showing this. They are pushing the agenda. Why? Because they realize that the economy is collapsing. So they set the stage, and they have all the government officials believing that we're primed for a terrorist attack from this group. And this is exactly what they're doing right now. This will be an in-house job. This will be a false flag. Yes, we will be attacked, but what's going to happen, it's going to be blamed on this group, but we know that this was created to get every single American pissed off, angry, and begging for war and to go attack. Just like what happened in 9/11, where Americans said, you know what, let's go after them. Go into Afghanistan. Most of the people believe that Iraq had something to do with 9/11, but we know it had absolutely nothing to do with that. They showed us evidence of weapons of mass destruction, which really didn't exist. They continually lied to us to make us do things that we normally wouldn't do. And that is go to war, because there is no person that wants to send their brother, their sister, their cousin, their children into war to get killed. That's the last thing they would ever do. But they need to lie to get people all rallied up and all excited to get them over there. And this is what they continually do. They push the propaganda. They lie to the people to get us to go to war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.